to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So, the film that I will be discussing is Set It Off. So, Set It Off is a 1996 action crime film. It is directed by F. Gary Gray, who is known for directing films such as The Italian Job and Straight Outta Compton. It is written by Takashi Buford, who is known for films such as Booty Call and House Party 3, and Kate Lanier, who's known for What's Love Got to Do with It and Glitter. And the story is by Takashi Buford. The film stars Jada Pinkett Smith, Queen Latifah, and Vivica A. Fox. Here is the synopsis. After being fired from her job as a bank teller, Frankie, played by Vivica A. Fox, begins working at a janitorial service with her friends Tishawn, played by Kimberly Elise, a single mother, Cleo, played by Queen Latifah, a boisterous lesbian, and Stoney, played by Jada Pinkett, who is dealing with the recent death of her brother. The women are struggling with their finances, so they decide to start robbing banks. At first, the group is successful, but they soon attract the attention of an obsessive detective played by John C. McGinley. So this film was released in theaters on November 6, 1996. It had a budget of $9 million. In terms of box office, it made over $36 million domestically. It opened at number three domestically with over $8.8 million. It was beaten by the films Ransom and Romeo and Juliet. In regards to critical reception, it has a 3.7 rating on Letterboxd. It won three Black Film Awards at the Acapulco Black Film Festival, which were Best Actress for Queen Latifah, Best Director for F. Gary Gray, and Best Soundtrack. In At the time of this recording, it is available on demand, so check your local provider. Okay, let's get into First Discovery. I remember growing up, I had the VHS tape of this. I don't remember my initial reactions, obviously, but I do remember it was quite an intense movie to watch just because of like the tone of the movie and the subject matter and all that stuff. But yeah, just rewatching it now, I find like it's a great film. Because I found like the actors did a great job with the performances, and also too it shows that like with our lead characters, they're people at the end of the day, even though um they do stuff that they shouldn't do, but it shows that how disposable they are in regards to how they're treated and all that stuff. And also too, I love how it shows that money can't solve anything. Not anything. I mean, money can't solve problems essentially. But yeah, I would say it's worthwhile with this movie. So let's get into the highlights. The cast is quite packed, I would say, with this movie. So first we have Jada Pinkett Smith. She plays Stony amongst her filmography. This would be high up there for me. I've not seen a ton of her stuff acting wise outside of the Matrix films that she has done. I enjoyed her character, Stony. Her character goes through a lot with this movie where she's trying to raise her younger brother, Stevie, after, I guess, because they've been, I guess, helping each other for quite some time after their parents apparently died in a car accident. And yeah, she's kind of put through the ringer in this movie because she's trying to get by with the her job at Luther's, but she's trying to also to help her brother Stevie get into college, and she decided to when Nate offered her the job, what was it, to be like some sort of saleswoman, car salesman or something like that, and she needed the advance, and and unfortunately had sex with him just to get that money to help Stevie out, but then turn well with the whole Stevie thing in terms of the college thing. I'll talk about that more in the lowlights section, But yeah, like she goes through a lot with this movie, and then she loses Stevie after mistaken identity, essentially, and yeah, I kind of felt bad like for her character. I would say out of the four, I would say I kind of felt bad for her the most. I would say. And then we have Queen Latifah as Cleo. Her character is quite out there. Like, in a way, her character is sort of like the wild card, even though you kind of know what you're going to get with her character, with her scenes in this movie. I bet Queen Latifah had fun playing this character. And it's interesting that with the description I read of the movie, which I got from Google, they described her character to be a boisterous lesbian. Cleo is more than a lesbian because they don't focus on the character being a lesbian at least fully, because she has what the girlfriend Ursula essentially, but that's not what Cleo is about in this movie. But anyways, yeah, she was fun to watch with Queen Latifah. Vivica A. Fox as Frankie. I would also say it's high up there in terms of her filmography with Vivica A. Fox. Also feel bad for Frankie, like what she had to go through at the bank at the beginning of this movie. I mean, I bet anyone in her position would have froze, but it seemed like the police and her bosses at the bank wanted to put the blame on her because she didn't follow procedure and that she knew the Darnell who robbed the bank. I, I. It's a shame though, because her character could have been given a warning for that, but nope, fired. Terrible. And then Kimberly Elise as TT. I think it's like one of the first movies that I've seen Kimberly Elise in the credits. She has the and introducing title. If you noted the opening credits for the movie, but yeah, her character is quite interesting. I wonder though if the character is meant to be either like on the spectrum, or if she's one of those like socially awkward type characters, or maybe some combination of both. You just never know. She's raising her young son alone, and also to what happened to the son is quite unfortunate with that incident at work. And yeah, that's tough though. And I thought like that with the four actresses, they had great chemistry together on screen. And yeah, they were believable as friends, I would say. And then also too, we have John C. McGinley as Detective Strode. And I bet for many people, he's more recognizable with his comedic work, particularly in Scrubs. But I would say for me, like it's this movie where I know him from the most. It shows that he can do it all essentially as an actor. But yeah, I thought he did a good job with this movie. And then also too, we have Blair Underwood. He plays Stoney's love interest Keith, who works at the bank that the girls want to case. Essentially, I find with the character Keith, he's more than a love interest. In a way, he kind of like helps Stony to find her purpose. If you note the scenes that they had together, when he asks, oh, like asked her, like, what do you want to do in 5 years? What is your future, essentially? And with Stony, she never seemed to think of that really, because all what she thought about was to provide for her younger brother, essentially, since they only had each other, essentially. But yeah, and also too, I think that's why too at the end, Stony thanks Keith over the phone essentially, because there was a part in the movie I believe when Stony tells Keith that she feels caged. I think because of like all like the responsibilities that she had to deal with, but also too with the issues that she was dealing with essentially is why she felt that way. And I think at least for me that's what uh, that final scene meant when she said thank you to Keith, though maybe you could argue because like he did not rat her out to the police, when I'm sure anyone in his position would. So, but yeah, I think it's more than that in regards to why Stoney thanked Keith at the end. And it's unfortunate that their relationship was short lived. And also, too, Dr. Dre as Black Sam. uh, I found like it was interesting, yeah, for him to be in this movie, even though it's a small role, I would say. I thought he did great in that, especially with his interactions with Queen Latifah. I believe there was that scene like when she tells Black Sam that when trying to get guns for the robbery, she's like, "Oh, I need something to set it off with," which always fun. It's always fun, like when you see movies, they plug in their titles, and honestly, those are can be hit and miss generally. But at least here in this movie, I would say it works. And also, too, I want to note that with the director F. Gary Gray, he does a cameo in this movie. This is when the girls are hanging out at the neighborhood in the parking lot, and he told Frankie to keep going, essentially after what happened at the bank. And yeah, that's pretty much it, acting wise. I wanted to highlight for this movie. As a highlight, I do want to note it's nice that even though like it's a crime movie and all that stuff, it really shows how friendship is important and how significant it is. The girls, they have their own like issues they're dealing with, but at least they all support each other, especially in times of need. A notable example is when Stony finds out that Stevie got gunned down by the police, and at least the girls, they show up, they support Stony, even though Stony like is going through a lot at the time. So, and then we see, yeah, like of course throughout the movie that they have like their arguments, like particularly when one of them would bring up, oh, let's rob a bank essentially, and Stony would always like turn that down, and it wasn't until when after the death of Stevie, she's like, yeah, I'll do it essentially. But yeah, it's nice like for the girls like to have that bond like through not just the good times but the bad times essentially. And what else? Cleo, like as a character, she's quite reckless, I would say, as a wild card essentially, because at least with the other characters, they have like their reasons for why they want to rob banks, because like with Frankie, for example, she's just fed up of her being mistreated essentially. Titi, of course, you could argue she needs the money the most because she loses custody of her son and needs the money to try to get the son back essentially. But Cleo, like, it seems like she just wants to rob banks for the sake of and and yeah, even like after like the first time they rob the bank, she spends that money buying that new car and the clothes like for Ursula. So it shows that she's more in it for the materialistic stuff, I would say, out of the group. And not surprised that with her actions kind of causes the downfall, I would say, of the group, particularly when and anytime she steals cars for the jobs, she always tosses out CDs which have the fingerprints essentially. And it seemed like she just didn't care about that because she wants her music essentially, or she could have just put on the radio and see what was on there, but nope. Had to toss those CDs out, but I guess she didn't care because all like she's focusing is on like right here, right now, essentially with her goals in this movie. What else in terms of highlights? It's clear that the girls are amateurs as robbers, and I think that's the point. That I bet some people say like it's unbelievable for them to be able to get away, essentially. But I think that's the point. Like they're not supposed to be pros at it because because when they decide to wear the wigs with the sunglasses, I'm like, yeah, like they can still tell from the cameras that it's them, which Detective Strode noted when he was looking through the footage. And I think for their final one, they wear the plastic mask. I guess that's a bit better, but still, it's like I don't know if that's quite effective, but yeah, like I'm sure some would say like these stuff is considered to be a low light, but I would say it's a highlight because it's clear that they're not supposed to be pros at it because none of them have any experience robbing banks, and I think also too that with Frankie, of course, having her background as a bank teller, it worked to their advantage because at least they kind of know like the system of banks and what to expect essentially, so at least that worked in their favor. Otherwise, they probably would have got caught day one. And it also too, I would say it's funny that with one of the banks they robbed, TT acted like a hostage essentially by lying down with the hostages. But I guess that was intentional because she stopped the guy from pulling the gun on them. So there's that. And speaking of Robbie, there was one of them when the drunk homeless guy was causing a scene outside. So I guess on one way that worked to the girls' advantage because at least they won't be interrupted by law enforcement. But on the other hand, it's not good because the police are just right there. And it's funny that like with Cleo, she she stole another car from the parking lot and it essentially crashed the place with the truck. So, but hey, I guess that's better than nothing essentially. But I found that scene was quite interesting. It also too showed I love the tension. Like, oh, like are they gonna get caught since the police are right there essentially, and they're also trying to manage the people inside the bank. So I found as a scene that was interesting, I would say. The ending, of course, I enjoyed. Yeah, it's quite sad, like with Sony being the only survivor out of the bunch. Because I felt like, yeah, with Cleo, with what happened to her, that was quite an impactful scene, I would say, because she knew like the jig was up essentially, but still tried to carry forward, and her fate was sealed. Like once she was trapped essentially with that. And Frankie, of course, I'll talk about that more in the lowlights section with that. But but yeah, also too it was unfortunate what happened to TT as well too, which I'll talk about in the lowlights section. But yeah, like Stony ends up being the lone survivor, and she's all alone inside the hotel room in Mexico, and she mourns over missing the girls and Stevie. So it's quite unfortunate that happened, and I guess the character had to move on in a way. So there's that. But she tells Keith that she feels. That she felt caged at one point, but now like she feels free, I would say, and she thanks him for that. So yeah. And I think that's all I had for the highlights. Let's go with the lowlights. Um so Stevie, so during the 70s party, I think that's meant to be his graduation party. So he told Stoney that he did not get the scholarship for college, which prompted Stoney to get the advance from Nate. And then afterwards, when she had to check, Stevie told Stoney, "Oh, he didn't get in college." So I'm kind of wondering, like, which is it? I'm wondering, did he lie to Stoney at first because he did not want to make that look worse than what it was? Or was this an oversight in regards to writing? I don't know. But yeah, like I felt in ways I felt bad for Stevie though because he didn't have to die at the end, but all because he got that AP, you know, terrible. And also too with that, I question why the police stopped him because this was late at night and it was dark, and they were able to tell that mark. Hilarious. Um, and then also, do Stony didn't had to rip the check. I get that, with heightened emotions and all that stuff, but she could have saved that check for later. But oh well. Also, too, there's a moment like when Cleo, Frankie, and Titi, they left the bag of money. They decided to hide it inside the vents at work, but then they decided to put it right in front of the vent where it's visible for anyone to see. I just did not get that. Like, why couldn't they push it further inside the vent, like push it to the side? I'm sure there was room there, unless it was one of those vents where it's just narrow. I don't know. That was weird. But then, no surprise that it got stolen, because anyone could have stolen that, honestly. But of course, Luther took it to splurge, and no surprise when they found him at the hotel room, he was not going to give it up, and that ultimately led his fate to be sealed when TT shot him. So yeah, I'm not surprised by that. But yeah, they could have done a better job hiding the money. And also too, so during like their final heist, so it looked like there was a standoff between Stony, TT, and Cleo, and Detective Strode and his partner Detective Waller. Which I want to note that her haircut looked like the bowl haircut. I find that's quite hilarious. But anyways, it looks like they were having a standoff and looked like the girls were gonna surrender. But then all of a sudden, the security guard just shows up out of nowhere to shoot TT. Like, it's like, what is that? Now, I would get it would make sense if, let's say, if they still had the guns and they weren't going to surrender, then the security guard wouldn't go pum pum. But that just came out of nowhere for the security guard to just shot her like that. It's like, plus, like, why would the security guard do that? Because the police were handling it. So, but I guess what the security guard wanted to play hero essentially. So that was weird, but also too sad for TT to get a shot, because it would have been nice for her to reunite with her son, but nope. Turns out the son is going to be raised under the child foster care system essentially. So that's too bad. Also too, yeah, like when Frankie is being surrounded by the cops, she has that confrontation with Detective Strode. I didn't get what she was thinking when she decided to run off, when she knew that the cops were there with their guns pointed towards her. I don't know. Maybe in her mind she felt that she was gonna make it, or she just didn't care. Who knows? But that was just not a good decision on her. Or maybe like she just she doesn't want to go to jail. But either way, like, yeah, what was she thinking there? Also too, there was a moment when the girls, they were at the restaurant. This was after when Luther stole their money. So they're at the restaurant. And I'm wondering why they decided to dine and dash there essentially. Because I wondered though, like, could they had used the money that they robbed from the bank to pay for the meal? Because I imagine the meal wasn't that pricey, just based on what I could tell there. But yeah, they could have. I don't know why they had to do that. And as a last note, I felt like Ursula could have been utilized a bit more than just being there as Cleo's girlfriend, essentially. And also, too, she barely had any lines, because I'm wondering if that was intentional or not. I don't know. All right, for trivia, there's a lot of fun facts here. I'm not going to say every single one for the sake of time, but here's the few that I will say. So apparently, so the screenwriter Takashi Buford said that apparently he was pitched the idea for this movie by, this was according to New Lines, the former New Line Cinema executive Helena Etchegoyen, because apparently she saw Thelma and Louise and then pitched the idea for the movie to Takashi Buford, who wrote a 40-page screenplay treatment. And then apparently, Buford said that he wrote the script with Jada Pinkett and Queen Latifah in mind, even though he did not met them. Um, says the script was offered to New Line 3 times before being accepted, and the studio filled in more about why the female leads turned to bank robbery in a way that wasn't in the original script. Interesting. And apparently, Rosie Perez was originally cast to play Frankie. Vivica Fox, she originally auditioned to play TT before eventually being cast as Frankie. So apparently, Vivica was working on Independence Day at the time. It was coached under audition by Will Smith. At the time, Will Smith was dating Jada Pinkett before they got married and all that stuff. Also, too, like the soundtrack for this movie apparently was huge at the time because apparently it reached number 4 on Billboard. And apparently, when the movie was released on pay per view, New Line gave a copy of the soundtrack to viewers who ordered The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is another movie made by New Line. Interesting. And also, too, I want to note that this movie became, they say, a cult classic, which I'm not surprised. Throughout the years, this movie has been parodied and spoofed, essentially. I saw before recording that on YouTube that Queen Latifah, she reprised her role as Cleo in a Mad TV sketch that aired in 1997 with Phil Lamar. That was hilarious there. And also too, apparently, like this says here that stage theater director and producer Jacarius Johnson apparently adopted Set It Off as an off Broadway play titled Set It Off in caps live on stage to say with the blessing of Takashi Buford. So apparently the play had a multi-city tour run in 2018 and 2021 with Debrat playing Cleo in both the 2018 and 2020 productions. The 2018 cast featured Kyla Pratt as Stoney, Latoya Luckett as Frankie, and Demetria McKinney as TT. The 2021 cast featured Keisha Knight Pullum as TT, Lil Mo and Vanessa Simmons as Frankie. They alternated shows. Drew Shadoya, Latoya London, and Marquita Goings as Stoney. They alternated shows. And Leon Robinson as Keith. The ensemble included James Lil J.J. Lewis, Bakista King, Michael Finn, Erica Pinkett, Jason Rains, Stephen J. Scott, and Carson Pursley. Apparently, the 2020 production was halted due to the pandemic, which led to rescheduling dates to 2021, essentially. And apparently, the play itself had mixed reviews. Interesting. And I've seen, like, apparently throughout the years, there has been talks of a sequel, essentially. And apparently, Jada was asked about this during an interview with People TV, and she said that she can't do it without Vivica, Queen Latifah, and Kimberly Elise. She's saying it's not going to happen, essentially. And yeah, Vivica Fox, I guess, in an interview with Entertainment Tonight Live, said that yeah, the movie is a classic. Just to leave it alone, essentially. There's no reason to redo it. Essentially, it's like essentially just it's good for things to just leave it as is. And which brings me to this note that I saw just before recording this that apparently this is according to an article on World of Real that I don't know how accurate this is, so take this with a grain of salt. So apparently, it says that Stephen Caple Jr., who directed Creed 2, is going to direct the Set It Off reboot. So this is according to the Insider. So that's Jeff Snyder, who does a lot of scoops, essentially. So apparently, Stephen Caple Jr. Is attached to do the reboot for Set It Off. It says that playwright and TV writer C.A. Johnson has been brought to polish the screenplay. Apparently, Issa Rae is going to both star and produce a new version of the movie. Um, and that's pretty much it. Because apparently, they said the new iteration has been percolating for a while. Says Sarita Singleton, who did One of Them Days, and Nina Gloucester, who did Star, were first hired to write the script back in 2019, with Singleton revealing earlier in 2025 that their version leaned into humor. Um, Apparently, Johnson was recently tapped to shepherd the project across the finish line, suggesting New Line is serious about getting it moving forward. Apparently, their New Line is targeting a budget in the $25 to $30 million range, positioning as a remake as a mid-budget studio play. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. I really think they should not. But we've seen time and time again that with a lot of these movies, they get to be remade essentially. So there's that. And yeah, I'm not a fan of this at all. Alrighty. So lastly, should this movie be rediscovered? So I say yeah, absolutely yes. It's a fantastic movie. It works as a crime film, and I love that it showcases our main characters as people, essentially dealing with issues and essentially trying to survive in an environment that sees them as disposable. So there's that. All right, so that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to support the podcast via donation and look at exclusive posts there. Join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is a community group on the official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the feature poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, leave a review and rate the podcast, and submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on our link tree to be featured on the Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. All right, so I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.